Japan's tourism board would pay actual money to make sure you never see this video. Because today I'm ranking the 12 most hated towns in the country that everyone thinks is the safest, cleanest, most orderly place on earth. Not the avoid these tourist traps lists. The towns where a mining company poisoned a bay so badly that walking like a poisoned cat became a diagnosable disease. Where a city went so broke it had to shut down its own hospital and rip out its own streetlights. Where a quiet farming village near Mount Fuji turned out to be the manufacturing site for a nerve gas attack, and where the ghost towns aren't abandoned because of the economy, they're abandoned because of radiation. Number 2 on this list is a place a lot of you have probably driven right past on a Fuji 5 Lakes road trip without having any idea what used to be there. If this video hits 50,000 likes, I'll do a part 2. Honestly, Japan has enough material for a part 7. Let's count it down. Number 12. Kotabuki Cho, Yokohama. Kotabuki Cho sits a few minutes walk from Yokohama's glittering waterfront and Chinatown, which makes the contrast almost violent. Tourists photograph the harbor lights. A few blocks over is one of Japan's 3 historic Doyagai-bei day laborer districts, where entire city blocks are made up of single-room flophouses, some barely wider than a closet, renting by the night to men who work construction and dock jobs when they're available. Kotabuki Cho was built for the post-war labor boom, when thousands of men came for dock and construction work and never left. Today, the district has one of the oldest and most male-skewed populations in the country. Many residents are elderly former laborers with no pension, no family contact, and no path out. In the 1980s, the district saw violent riots between residents and police tied to allegations of predatory lending and abuse by loan sharks preying on day laborers. The scars from that era are still part of the neighborhood's identity. Walk 2 streets in either direction, and you're back in postcard Yokohama. That's the part that gets me. This isn't some remote, forgotten prefecture. It's a 5-minute walk from where people take engagement photos. Number 11. Kamagasaki, Aren District. Osaka, if Kotabuki Cho is Japan's second slum, Kamagasaki. Officially renamed Aren, though almost nobody who lives there uses that name, is the biggest one in the country. At its peak, the district housed tens of thousands of day laborers in flophouses packed so tightly that some blocks have more vending machines than working streetlights. Kamagasaki has a documented history of large-scale riots, more than 20 since the 1960s, most triggered by allegations of police misconduct or brutality against laborers. As Japan's construction boom faded and the workforce aged out with no safety net, the district transformed from a labor hub into one of the country's largest concentrations of elderly homelessness. Local welfare groups estimate a significant share of residents are unemployed men over 65 living on public assistance in single rooms, with nowhere else registered as their legal address. City officials have spent years trying to rebrand the area. New signage, redevelopment plans, a push to attract backpacker hostels into the same buildings that used to house laborers. The laborers are mostly still there. The label just changed. Number 10. Kabukicho, Tokyo. Kabukicho is famous. It's in every Tokyo neon lights montage, every Blade Runner but real travel video. What most of those videos don't show you is what actually funds those lights. A host and hostess club economy that has trapped a startling number of young women in Japan in genuine compounding debt. The mechanic is well documented by Japanese labor and welfare NGOs. Hostesses are pressured to buy expensive bottles for top host performers to keep their favorite entertainers' rankings high, sometimes financed through in-house loans from the club itself. Some women fall into debt bondage arrangements where a portion of their earnings is garnished indefinitely, and a number end up funneled into the district's sex industry to pay it off. Tokyo's Shinjuku ward government has run public awareness campaigns specifically warning young women moving to the city about host club debt traps, which tells you how common the pattern is. Kabukicho also has one of the highest concentrations of organized crime-linked businesses in the country, and the police maintain a dedicated substation, the Kabukicho police box, literally built in the middle of the district's main square, because ordinary patrols weren't enough. It's one of the most photographed intersections in Japan. It's also one of the most heavily policed for a reason. Number 9. Yubari, Hokkaido. Yubari used to be a coal mining boomtown of over 100,000 people. When the mines closed in the 1990s, the city tried to reinvent itself as a tourism destination, ski resorts, a film festival, a melon branding campaign for its genuinely famous premium cantaloupes. The bet didn't pay off. In 2007, Yubari officially declared municipal bankruptcy, the largest local government collapse in modern Japanese history, with debts estimated around 63 billion yen. The city had to sell off public assets, shut its only hospital and replace it with a small clinic, cut half its public workforce, and slash mayoral pay to the lowest in the country. Streetlights were removed, public toilets closed. The population, once over 100,000, has collapsed to under 7,000 today, with more than half of residents now over 65, one of the most extreme aging rates of any municipality in Japan. The kicker, Yubari's melons still sell at auction for tens of thousands of dollars a pair. The city that can't afford streetlights is still famous for growing some of the most expensive fruit on earth. Number 8. Ishinomaki, Miyagi. On March 11, 2011, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake off the Tohoku coast triggered a tsunami that hit the port city of Ishinomaki harder than almost anywhere else in Japan. Waves reached several meters in height and pushed kilometers inland across the flat coastal plain. Ishinomaki recorded more deaths and missing than any other single municipality from the disaster. Official counts place the toll at well over 3,000 people in the city alone. An elementary school in the Ishinomaki area, Okuma, became one of the disaster's most scrutinized tragedies. 74 of 108 students and 10 of 13 staff died when evacuation decisions delayed moving children to higher ground before the tsunami arrived. Bereaved families later won a landmark court ruling finding the city and prefecture liable for inadequate disaster planning, a rare judicial rebuke of Japanese disaster response institutions. Reconstruction has been slow and uneven. Years after the disaster, some relocated public housing complexes for displaced residents were still only partially filled, and several coastal fishing communities never returned to their pre-disaster population. A city that used to define itself by its port and its fish market is still, more than a decade later, defined by a single morning in March. Number 7. Fuchu-machi, Toyama, itai disease. Decades of cadmium discharge from an upstream mining operation along the Jinzu River in Toyama Prefecture, contaminated farmland and irrigation water used to grow rice. Long-term cadmium exposure caused a condition locally named itai baiyo. Literally, it hurts disease. A severe bone softening and kidney-damaging illness named after the sounds patients reportedly made from the pain of fractures that could occur from simple movements, like coughing. It became one of Japan's officially recognized 4 big pollution diseases, and it took decades of litigation before affected farmers won compensation and remediation commitments. Contaminated farmland in the affected areas required extensive soil replacement projects that continued for years. Today, the area has largely recovered and is rarely mentioned outside public health textbooks, which is exactly the problem. A disease named after the sound of a person in pain barely registers as a place name anymore. Number 6. Minamata, Kumamoto. I want to be careful with this one because it involves real families who are still living with the consequences today. Starting in the 1950s, the Chiso Corporation's chemical plant in Minamata Bay discharged industrial wastewater containing methyl mercury directly into the water. the mercury moved up the food chain into fish that were a dietary staple for the fishing community around the bay. Residents began developing severe neurological symptoms: loss of muscle control, slurred speech, tunnel vision, seizures, and, in the most severe cases, coma and death. The condition was eventually named Minamata disease. Chiso and local officials were slow to acknowledge the cause, and for years continued disputing the link while discharges continued. Government certification records eventually recognized several thousand victims, though advocacy groups have long argued the true number affected is many times higher, since certification required navigating a strict and often adversarial review process. Minamata is now internationally studied as a textbook case in industrial pollution and public health failure. The 2013 UN Minamata Convention on Mercury is literally named after this town. There's a museum in Minamata today that documents the disease with photographs from that era. It is one of the hardest museums in the country to walk through. Number 5. Sanya, Tokyo. Sanya technically doesn't exist anymore. Tokyo officially erased the name from maps in the 1960s, folding it into neighboring districts, partly to shed its reputation. Everyone who's lived in the area for generations still calls it Sanya. Like Kotabuki Cho and Kamagasaki, Sanya was one of Japan's original Doyagai labor districts, packed with flop houses for laborers who built post-war Tokyo. As construction work dried up and the laborer population aged with nowhere to go, the neighborhood transformed into one of the highest concentrations of elderly homelessness and welfare dependency in the capital. Sanya saw its own history of major riots against police in the 1980s, tied to the same predatory day labor lending patterns documented in Kamagasaki and Kotabuki Cho. The same disease, 3 different cities. In recent years, some of Sanya's old flophouses have been converted into backpacker hostels, drawn by rock-bottom rents in a district that's technically a short ride from Asakusa's temples and tourist crowds. Some travelers rave online about the cheap, clean rooms with no idea they're staying in a building that used to house day laborers with nowhere else to sleep. Number 4. Tama Newtown, Tokyo. Tama Newtown, spanning Tama, Hachioji, and neighboring cities on Tokyo's western edge, was built starting in the 1960s as the post-war dream of Japanese suburban living. Enormous blocks of danchi apartment towers, wide green parks, and modern amenities designed for young families fleeing the crowded central city. It was, at the time, the largest planned residential development in the country. Families moved in by the tens of thousands. Because it was built all at once, in a single wave, the entire population aged together, all at once. Decades later, some of its original danchi blocks now have resident populations where well over half are over 65, among the highest concentrations of elderly residents of any large housing development in the country. Many of the original buildings were constructed without elevators, meaning residents in their 80s now live trapped on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th floor of buildings with no lift, unable to easily leave their own apartment. Japan has a documented, tracked phenomenon called kodakushi, lonely deaths, where someone dies alone and isn't discovered for days or weeks. And aging danchi complexes like Tama Newtown's older blocks are exactly the kind of housing where welfare offices and specialized cleaning companies report it most often. There is a real functioning industry in Japan of specialist crews whose entire job is cleaning and restoring rooms after a kodakushi case. Some of those companies have publicly cited elevator-less 1960s, 70s danchi developments as a recurring job site. The utopia that was supposed to be Japan's family-friendly future became, 50 years later, a case study in what happens when an entire town grows old on exactly the same schedule, in buildings that were never designed to let anyone grow old in them. Number 3. Huis Bosch, Sasebo, Nagasaki. Huis Bosch is the kind of place that sounds fake until you see the receipts. In 1992, a Dutch theme town was built from scratch on reclaimed land in Sasebo. Full-scale replicas of Dutch canals, Windmills, brick townhouses, and a palace modeled on the actual Huis Bosch royal residence in the Netherlands. It wasn't built as a theme park attraction bolted onto a real town. It was designed and marketed as an actual planned town people could live and work in, styled entirely after the Netherlands, complete with real canals dug for boats to travel through. The bet was enormous and it collapsed. By 2003, Huis Bosch had accumulated debts reported around 220 billion yen, one of the largest theme park-style bankruptcies in Japanese corporate history, and went through court-led restructuring. Multiple owners and investment firms cycled through trying to rescue it over the following years before it stabilized. During its lowest years, sections of the meticulously built Dutch townscape sat half-empty, windmills turning over streets with barely any foot traffic, in a ghost version of a country that was never actually there. Under new ownership and management starting in the 2010s, Huis Bosch has clawed its way back to profitability and reinvented itself with seasonal illumination festivals, and it now draws millions of visitors a year. It's held up as one of the country's rare "we actually turned it around" stories. It's also a town where a company decided the fix for empty Dutch streets on the coast of Nagasaki was more lights, and it worked. Number 2. Kamikuishiki, Yamanashi. I told you number 2 would shock you, and I meant it. When I was mapping out little detours near the Fuji 5 lakes, the kind of quiet farming villages you drive through on the way to a campsite or a ryokan, one name kept surfacing in old travel forums and news archives, always with the same warning attached. Don't confuse this village with just another sleepy stop on the Fuji foothills. Kamikuishiki was, until the mid-1990s, exactly that. A small agricultural village at the base of Mount Fuji, population a few thousand, mostly known for lettuce farming. Then a religious group called Aum Shinrikyo began buying up land and building a cluster of large industrial-looking compounds it labeled Satien, officially describing them as communal residences and religious facilities. Behind that description, the group was manufacturing chemical weapons. On March 20th, 1995, Aum Shinrikyo members released sarin nerve gas on 5 Tokyo subway trains during rush hour, killing 13 people and injuring thousands more, with some estimates of those treated for symptoms running as high as 6,000. Investigators traced the production of the nerve agent directly back to the Kamikuishiki compound. Days after the attack, roughly 2,500 police personnel raided the site in one of the largest police operations in modern Japanese history, uncovering chemical stockpiles, weapons, and evidence tied to earlier unsolved deaths linked to the cult. At points in the mid-1990s, the cult's registered membership in the tiny village reportedly rivaled a meaningful share of the actual resident population. A religious commune quietly outgrowing the town hosting it, the facilities were eventually demolished. In 2006, Kamikuishiki merged with neighboring towns into what's now Fujikawa-Guchiko, a name change that was, among other things, a deliberate attempt to separate the area's identity from what happened there. Today, the land is mostly quiet farmland and campgrounds again, a short drive from some of the most photographed Mount Fuji viewpoints in the country. Plenty of people pass directly through what used to be the compound without any idea what they're driving past. Number 1. Okuma and Futaba, Fukushima. These two towns co-host the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, and after the March 2011 meltdown following the same earthquake and tsunami that devastated Ishinomaki, both were evacuated entirely. For years, they were the two most literal ghost towns in the developed world. Full towns, homes, shops, and schools left exactly as they were the moment residents fled, now sitting empty behind radiation checkpoints. Portions of both towns have gradually reopened as decontamination work brought radiation levels down, and the Japanese government has invested heavily in rebuilding infrastructure to attract residents back. But return rates have been low. Many former residents built new lives elsewhere over the past decade and have no plans to move back to a town whose name is now permanently associated with a nuclear disaster. As of recent counts, only a small fraction of Okuma's and Futaba's pre-disaster populations have returned, even in the sections officially cleared for habitation. You can now visit parts of both towns. There are guided tours through preserved sections that show classrooms with 2011 calendars still on the wall and shoes still lined up at school entrances. It's presented as disaster education. It is also, unavoidably, one of the strangest tourism products on Earth.